Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, the tell-all. Let's watch.
One of the things you guys talked about was your hat, Gino.
Oh, my hat?
Your hat.
I have told him from the first day I saw him without the hat. He's so handsome. He looks so much better. But in my opinion, baby, take it off, please.
Why don't you just take it off, Gino? Take it off, Gino.
There's nothing wrong with Jasmine saying, I don't like the hat. There's nothing wrong with her saying, you look great without the hat, and you're sexy, and, you know, I detect that you feel there's something wrong with you because you're bald and you need to wear a hat all the time. You don't need to do that. You're a good-looking person. You know, she's done a lot of that, and I think that's actually pretty good for him. But at a certain point, regardless of all that, people are allowed to do what they want with their own bodies within reason, as long as it doesn't harm other people. Him wearing a hat does not harm anybody. He could literally wear that hat 24/7, sleep in it, and it's not going to impact anybody. It's just a visual eyesore to Jasmine or something. And I've been saying this from the beginning, there's something about, we have a license in our society that we can do this sort of thing really to everyone, but I think men in particular. And as a man, I've experienced that. I'll be wearing something and people will feel like they have license to just ridicule me for something that, you know, I like to wear. And I'm not particularly precious about my fashion, especially as I get older, but it doesn't feel good. It feels like, well, what's it to you? And there's this, like, well, I'll give one example. Well, I won't go down that road. Anyway, point is that there's a line there of, okay, you can say that, but at some point you just say, well, he's entitled to to dress himself the way he wants to dress. And also we can understand that for some people, their phobia or concern might not be exactly rational. For example, you know, when we watched Corey and Evelyn in the beginning, when Corey was getting his vaccinations before going down to, where was it? Ecuador? That he was terrified of getting needles. And even though intellectually, I think Corey understood that he needed those shots, his body was rejecting it. And we have irrational fears. We have irrational thoughts sometimes. And that's normal. And you don't want to, like, if a kid is afraid of swimming, you don't throw them in the deep end. That can be traumatizing them. There's a small chance it'll actually work by exposing them to the stimulus of anxiety and them realizing it's actually no big deal. But there's a much bigger risk that if a kid is afraid of water and swimming and you push them in the deep end, there's a much greater risk that they'll never go in the water ever again. And they'll never trust you again. So we understand that people have fears, they have issues, and I'm guessing for Gino, he understands. It's like, okay, yeah, I hear you. I believe that you feel that way about me, and I still don't feel good about taking my hat off, so can we please shut up about it? It's you know, Gino might be able to handle this situation, but this is a broader issue that all of us need to stop. You know, I'm actually hearing people because when Jasmine, I might be talking on my butt a little bit, but I think she off the show reported that she has hair loss and she wears a wig, and I think she's wearing that wig right there. I saw this because she was on a Entertainment Tonight or something doing an interview, and I reacted to that, and she was wearing, I believe, this wig because it's well after the shooting of the show. And in the same vein, you can't look at her and say, your hair loss is fine, you're beautiful, take off the wig. We understand that you shouldn't say that, right? That's not okay. Or if someone just hated their knees, the way their knees looked, and so they just never wore shorts or a skirt or something, And there's an, oh, I just don't like my knees. I always have to have them covered with a dress or with pants or something. You wouldn't say, take off your pants and wear shorts. You wouldn't say that, right? Well, the same applies to him. We can't have a general rule or guideline or ethical code in our society and discard it when it comes to particular individuals. It's just not okay.
Which is true.
You don't have to say nasty stuff like that.
Are you still This is the same you.
I regret nothing. I'm sorry.
So she's saying she regrets nothing, which surprises me because in other interview, she did that interview with Entertainment Tonight, I believe. I can't remember where the interview was, and I reacted to it. I seem to remember, this was a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, she was saying that she did regret it. So, but we didn't know exactly what she was referring to. Anyway, maybe she's just joking. I hope she does regret that, because that's, it's interesting with Jasmine. I was saying this from the beginning, is that there are times when she absolutely can reflect and say, that was not okay. I overreacted. And I think she even referred to past traumas, relational traumas that she's been through that would be triggered and would cause her to get overly upset, overly hurt, and overly angry. So, and she also recovers pretty quickly. There are times when you would think she would be triggered, or at least be triggered for a long period of time, and she very quickly recovers. So it's been interesting to see that contrast between trigger, emotional response, anger, unfairness, and then pretty quickly apologizing or not reflecting back on that mindset and saying like, well, I think I was in a bad mindset at the time. Because we've seen other people on the show where it just gets worse and worse, like with Ariella and Biniam. I don't know if this is exactly true, but it's seemingly a similar syndrome of preoccupied attachment. I don't know, but at least the way it's presented. And meaning that attachment injury resulting in a defense of pursuing and hypervigilance and assumptions of abandonment when it doesn't exist, so that you can respond and quickly to retain attachment. But that ends up pushing people away, ironically, paradoxically. So with Ariella, we would see her get triggered. We'd see her have a reaction. We could understand why she would get triggered given the way that Biniam behaves. I mean, he seems to exhibit an avoidant style, and so they equally trigger each other. It's a very classic configuration that I will see on my couch in my office of an avoidant and a preoccupied person triggering each other, and then they proceed to engage in behaviors that are more and more problematic, which triggers each other anymore. Anyway, so I can understand why she would get triggered, but her response from the edit anyway seems to be more of what happened to her in her past, which we don't know what that was, rather than a reflection of what's happening in the present, which is very normal for us, particularly when we have attachment injuries. Anyway, so with Ariella, we didn't see that reflection. We wouldn't, at least on the show, we wouldn't see Ariella say, particularly very quickly, oh, I was overreacting that time. I think I went too far with him. We wouldn't see that. We would see a very self-assured reflection after the fact saying, yeah, that makes sense. And what we're hoping for in therapy and with ourselves is the ability to reflect on ourselves and to recognize when we're being irrational. All of us are irrational on a regular basis. And the ability to look back at our previous behavior, and at best in the moment, actually, but that's a lot to ask, and say, I was distorted in that moment, is one of the key features in developing a satisfactory life. Without that ability, you are blinded by your own reactivity and will harm everyone around you and yourself by extension, because people will treat you poorly or they'll run away from you and you won't be able to get any of your needs met. It'll affect your parenting if you're not aware of your reactivity. and your irrationality and your distortions with your own kids. You will mistreat your own kids. You have to be able to recognize that you are a mostly good person with some flaws. Now, when you have preoccupied attachment, you have been shown that you don't matter very much and are possibly believing that if you didn't have so many flaws, people would love you more, which is a false notion. It had nothing to do with you and your occasional flaws. It has to do with your own parents and their attachment injuries that they incurred when they were children, by the way. But the child will internalize it, well, it's my fault. And so as you're an adult, the notion that you have flaws actually is terrifying, because the conclusion is, well, therefore I'll never be loved at all. And so there's an avoidance of your own flaws. And there's a tendency narcissistically for all of us to believe that our feelings are reality and our reactions are fair, because that's just how we're organized psychically. We just believe that everything we do is normal. So hopefully Jasmine can re-engage in that mindset. We'll see what happens.
So with the little police emoji, but it was a little much.
I'm being very transparent to him. Oh, my name is Brittany. What the you care?
I want to be nice and say, hi, what's your name? But I wasn't hitting on her.
Jasmine, do you worry that Gino is cheating on you?
All the time.
Right, so that's a feature of preoccupied attachment. I don't know if Jasmine would agree with the conceptualization that she has preoccupied attachment, but when, as I was saying earlier, because of the inconsistency in attunement and attachment security that you experience 0 to 5 years old, you have this, you learn that you need to be hypervigilant to retain attachment. You have to be constantly aware and very outward focused on your attachment figures so that you don't lose them. Because when you act normally, like the way a regular 3-year-old does, your attachment figures would just drift away emotionally or physically. And so you learn, like, you have to constantly be aware. The other thing the thing that will motivate that is if you are constantly assuming that you're about to be abandoned and that people want to abandon you. And so you have to, and sometimes life will teach you that when you're 0 to 5. So you have to have this mindset of, at any moment, I'm going to lose my attachment figures. Not only have I learned that from the past, but I've learned neurologically that and this is subconscious, if I orient myself on that assumption, I will constantly be making sure that I'm holding. It's sort of like if you're walking down the sidewalk, you're not super concerned about falling over, right? Because there's not a lot of danger. Even if you tripped, it's just like you just fall down. It wouldn't be great. But if you're walking on a tightrope, all of your neurons are going to be focused on making sure you don't fall over, right? Because you could die. Well, for preoccupied people, they assume, they see the world as if they are walking on a tightrope all the time. They're never not on a tightrope with their relationships. They have to constantly pay attention or else they'll lose their partner. And one of the assumptions that it will manifest, in terms of a concrete manifestation of that assumption is, my partner is going to cheat on me. My partner is capable of cheating on me. Other people are capable of pulling him away from me. At any moment, he's going to cheat on me. And of course, he didn't do any favors to that trauma and that reactivity that she has by his behavior.
All the time?
Yes, all the time. I'm sorry.
Why? I never cheated on you.
Sure.
I have not. It's a fact.
What about lying? Because in my eyes, that's cheating.
Yeah, I mean, she's free to define cheating as she will, and that's certainly lying is in the same category as cheating for a lot of people. It's a trust violation. It's hurtful. So, yeah, for sure. But I would hope that Jasmine would understand that it's okay to be concerned about losing your partner. It's okay to be worried about infidelity, but that doesn't justify control and coercion and abuse. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.